You ever get that feeling that something's just off? Like the way we measure success is all wrong, that we're so focused on the price of things that we're completely forgetting their actual worth. Well, you're not alone. The former governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, thinks we're in a massive crisis where market value has started to completely take over our human values. And to really get a handle on this, we've got to start somewhere. Pretty unexpected.
So picture this. The story kicks off at the Vatican. Yeah, the Vatican. Mark Carney is having lunch with Pope Francis, and the Pope shares this parable that it nails the heart of the problem. He starts talking about wine, and not just as, a drink. He's talking about it as a whole experience. It's got a bouquet, a history, it brings people together. It has a kind of value you just can't slap a price tag on. But then, he gives this warning about what happens when we try to boil it all down.
He says, look, you can take wine and distill it down into grappa. Now, what you get is super potent. It's pure, sure, but you lose everything else. All that richness, the complexity, that amazing smell, it's all gone. Grappa has a price. It's got a simple, straightforward exchange value. But wine has values. And that, right there, is the perfect metaphor for what we've been doing. We've been taking the rich, complex wine of human experience and turning it into the simple, one-dimensional grappa of market price.
So, the big question is, how did we get here? I mean, when did the logic of the market, price and profit, when did that become the rule book for everything? From how we raise our kids to how we deal with the planet?
Now, it's really easy to point the finger at the guy who basically invented modern economics, Adam Smith. But the thing is, we've kind of turned him into a cartoon villain. Smith was not a market fundamentalist. His super famous book, The Wealth of Nations, it's only half the story. You have to read it with its partner, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. See, he knew that markets don't just float in space, they're built on a foundation of culture, of trust, of all these social norms.
Okay, so what happens when we just ignore all that social stuff? When we just try to slap a simple market solution onto a very human problem? Well, there was this fascinating real-world experiment that gives us the perfect answer.
So check this out. In Israel, a bunch of daycare centers were having this issue with parents showing up late all the time. So what did they do? They tried a classic market fix. They introduced a fine. But here's where it gets wild. Instead of late pickups going down, they shot way up. So what on earth happened?
It turns out the parents didn't see the fine as a punishment at all. Nope. They saw it as a fee for a service. It completely changed the game. It took this social norm, that feeling of guilt for making a teacher wait, and it replaced it with a simple transaction. All of a sudden, parents felt like they were just paying for extra time. And just like that, the considerate behavior, poof, gone. The grappa of price had totally wiped out the wine of social responsibility.
And look, this kind of flawed logic, it has consequences that go way, way beyond daycare centers. This is the kind of thinking that can bring the entire global system crashing to its knees. Which brings us to the ultimate case study, the 2008 financial crisis, seen through the eyes of Mark Carney, who was right there in the middle of it.
Early in his career, someone gave Carney a really solid piece of advice. They told him, if someone is explaining a financial product to you and it still doesn't make any sense, you should run. It's a warning against all that financial wizardry, those myths about risk-free investments, and of course, the 4 most expensive words in finance. This time is different. Well, in 2007, the entire world was about to learn that lesson, the hard way. From where Carney was sitting, the crisis just accelerated with this terrifying speed. It all started with this kind of weird weekend phone call back in August 2007 about some small corner of the credit market just freezing up. Seemed small at the time. But then, fast forward just 1 year, and he's getting a call on a Sunday from the Fed because Lehman Brothers is collapsing. And then, just a few weeks after that, he's in an emergency G7 meeting, desperately trying to stop the entire global economy from falling off a cliff into another Great Depression. So, when the dust finally settled, who ended up paying the price for all this? These so-called masters of the universe who created the whole mess? They just turned to the government, to us, the taxpayers, to bail them out. And this raised a huge fundamental question of fairness. How on earth can we have a system where the profits are privatized, but the catastrophic losses, those get socialized? Heads they win, tails we lose.
But here's the thing. The 2008 crisis wasn't just some freak, one-off event. Carney argues that it was really a symptom of a much deeper problem, a sickness in how we value things. And it's a sickness that has led to not just one crisis, but multiple overlapping ones.
I mean, just look at this chart. It shows the absolutely explosive growth in GDP per person over the last couple of centuries. And on one hand, it's a story of incredible progress, right? Amazing wealth creation. But when you look at a curve that steep, you really have to ask yourself, what did we trade away to get this? What are the hidden costs of all that growth?
And this is where it all connects. It's the same fundamental mistake in our value system that's at the root of all our biggest challenges. Think about it. The financial crisis? We valued complicated financial tricks over just being prudent. The pandemic? We completely undervalued being prepared because, hey, it doesn't give you an immediate profit. And climate change? We are literally discounting the entire future for the sake of short-term gain right now. It's the same flawed logic again and again.
Okay, so that leads us to the most important question of all. How do we fix this? How do we actually rebuild a system where the market serves us and not the other way around? How do we turn all this grappa back into wine?
Well, Carney lays out a path forward that's built on 4 big ideas. First up is purpose. He says companies and leaders have got to look beyond just the bottom line. Second is resilience. We need to actually prepare for the shocks we know are coming instead of just cleaning up the mess afterwards. Third is solidarity. We have to remember we're all in this together, a community, not just a bunch of individuals competing with each other. And finally, humility. We've got to admit that we don't have all the answers and that with great success comes great responsibility.
And the final idea he leaves us with is all about legacy. You know, our personal accomplishments, they're going to fade. Our names will eventually be forgotten. But our values, what he calls our moral sentiments, those can live on. They can be passed from one person to the next, like a chain, creating a better future. It's a really powerful thought about what actually lasts. And that brings us right back to where we began. The challenge, really for all of us, in our jobs, in our communities, in our own lives, is to figure out the answer to the Pope's simple but profound question. How do we get back all that richness, all that complexity we've lost in our mad dash to slap a price tag on everything? In other words, how do we turn the grappa back into wine?